All right, while all the talk this week is on the president's firing of FBI Director James Comey, the man at the center of the investigation into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia is Michael Flynn. The Senate Intelligence Committee issued a subpoena this week requesting the former National Security Advisor hand over documents on his interactions with Russian officials. The subpoena comes after Flynn refused to voluntarily turn over the documents. Flynn is one of 4 former Trump advisors the Senate has sent requests to, and the other 3 are former campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page, former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and former advisor Roger Stone. Page, who has appeared on CNN many times, has already said that he will not cooperate and even suggested the committee get the information from former President Barack Obama. Avery Friedman, a civil rights attorney, and Richard Herman, a criminal defense attorney, both with me right now. All right, so these grand jury subpoenas indicate that the investigation continues. So what, in your view, Richard, does this signal?
Well, it signals that they're closing in on these individuals, especially Flynn. You know, when his lawyer reached out in March and claimed he's got a story to tell, to me, that was a little sign of weakness there, because at a minimum, he failed to register as a foreign agent taking money from Russia and Turkey. He had an obligation to register. He didn't. I think it's much more than that. And if, in fact, Flynn has a version, a story, if he can deliver President Trump on any of these charges of collusion with the Russians, that's what the government will be looking for from Flynn. Whether he can do it, whether he can be credible, whether he's believable, and whether his own acts are not so tarnished as to destroy his testimony. That's going to be the test coming up in the future, Fred.
So then, Avery, he has already been denied, immunity in exchange for his testimony on Capitol Hill. But the door isn't closed completely on that, is it? I mean, if Congress decides that he still has some pretty good information, or they could leverage that, is there still an opportunity where he may be able to be granted immunity? And if so, would that protect him from potential federal prosecutions?
Not a chance, Frederica. Not only do you have FBI looking into this, you obviously have the grand jury in the Northern District of Virginia and Alexandria, but you also have Senate Intelligence Committee. He's not getting immunity. And in fact, what they're doing now is they're issuing subpoenas to Flynn's business associates. He has a corporation in Virginia, the Flynn Intel Group. So the fact is, the evidence is building and building. The chance of Michael Flynn ever getting immunity, I think, is virtually impossible, because you have 4 federal laws, including registration, potential obstruction, lying to the FBI. Purportedly, he interviewed with FBI on January 24th, and then what's called the SF-86, which is the form where he had to disclose money from foreign agents. He never did it. And so the only remaining question is, did he do all this stuff on purpose, which affects all of this, as well as the Intelligence Committee? And that's the question of contempt of Congress.
So then, Richard, Flynn's lawyer, Robert Kellner, has gone public saying that they will not produce the documents. So refusing to do so could potentially lead to what?
Yeah, he could be held in contempt. He is going to produce these eventually, Fred. It may wind itself through the courts, but he's going to produce it. The thing is this, Fred, I disagree with Avery. I think there is a likelihood that they will use Flynn as a witness down the road. Not right now, but down the road.
So cut a deal.
The question remains, are they even going to need Flynn? Because President Trump is displaying characteristics of being unhinged. And what he did to Comey like that, to me, is very close to obstruction of justice. And that's impeachable. That's number 1 impeachment ground against Nixon, number 3 against President Clinton. Listen, Fred, President Trump is out of control right now, and they very well may not need Flynn's testimony. It's getting bad.
Avery?
The president may be out of control, but it's not the issue. The fact is that Michael Flynn stands alone. Yes, he has a story to tell, but that predicated his lawyer's argument, give me immunity, and I'll tell you the story. There isn't much of a story to tell. The fact is that Michael Flynn and Donald Trump were in sync on this. Let's get the development. Let's get those documents. Whether or not the president is coming unhinged, again, that sounds like more political commentary than legal analysis. let's zero in on Flynn. Let's get some of those answers first.
Richard?
That's wrong, Fred. Fred, if Flynn can give the government, if he can say that President Trump told him, go speak to Kislyak, tell him, don't worry about the sanctions, we'll handle that in a couple months. And he gave Flynn orders to communicate with the Russians and controlled some of the WikiLeaks. This is what the government wants. That's treason. Okay? That's important. That's devastating testimony. And if Flynn can provide that, and they weigh it out, the government weighs it out, and it can be sustained, he's going to be used, Fred. So, he's going to be used.
Congress can't prosecute. So if he refuses to comply and says, I'm not going to be a party to that, but then
with the FBI.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It'll be in conjunction with the FBI. Congress won't blatantly.
But might he and his camp just be waiting, buying time, saying, okay, we're just going to wait until DOJ steps in. But right now, Congress, we're not participating.
Well, a violation of complying with this congressional mandate actually is a crime. You up to a year in jail, up to $100,000. That's, I think, the least of Michael Flynn's problems right now, because you have all these other agencies and, of course, grand jury looking into it. It's going to get worse before it gets better for him.
What I think is telling, Fred, is that White House counsel are telling President Trump, stop your efforts to try to get a hold of Flynn. Stop your efforts trying to reach out to him. Why is he doing that? Why is he now saying Flynn is such a good guy? He got a raw deal. There's something to hide here, Fred. There's so much smoke. Every day there's so much smoke here. And whether or not there were crimes committed, we don't know. Not yet. But there's a lot of smoke, Fred.
Okay.
And if it acts like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it flies like a duck, let's see what happens here.
All right, Richard Avery, we'll leave it right there. Thank you so much. And somebody answer the door. I heard a bell ringing. All right, gentlemen, good to see you as always. Take care.
See you later.
And we'll be right back.